I'd like to do a tutorial on Cello Song by Nick Drake. And there's two main parts, the introduction and then the main pattern that repeats throughout the verses. So I'll split the video into 2 bits, or I may even do 2 videos. When I looked, I hadn't seen any tutorials on this, and I think lots of people would like to play it. So if it's useful, this is the way that I think about it, at least, if it helps somebody out there. So very quickly, the tuning. You're in almost standard tuning. You're just taking the 3rd string, the G, and you're taking it down a half step to F sharp. So if you're tuning the guitar against itself, instead of tuning it against the 4th string at the 5th fret, you just tune it against the 4th string at the 4th fret, or use a tuner. It's F sharp, not G. And then capo at the 6th fret. The way that I like to think about this introduction is that it's sort of a study on hammer-ons. It's like Nick Drake is trying out different ideas, all the different ways that you can phrase a hammer-on within the same repeated bar around the same chord. So he's just playing this chord here. You have 1 finger, 3rd finger in the 2nd fret, 2nd string. That's 2nd fret relative to the capo, which you've got at fret 6. 1st finger, 3rd string, 1st fret, and then your 2nd finger, 4th string in the 2nd fret. So it's a kind of like an A chord, but with this note flattened down a full step. And you're just taking and replacing different fingers in turn to get the hammer-ons. And the other thing which we'll go into as you go into each section is that there are 2 types of hammer-on. I think this is the thing that might catch people out, which is probably the hardest thing to get your head around. And it's worth just getting a feel for it before you get stuck into the details. And there's one type of hammer-on which probably will come more naturally, which is where you're playing a bass string throughout, and you pluck the bass and the note that you're hammering into at the same time to start the hammer. Then you land the hammer as the 2nd note. So it's 2 notes together, and then the hammer lands. That's probably the most comfortable, intuitive type of hammer-on. But then there's a 2nd type of hammer-on, which is where you start the hammer on the open note first, and then you land it at the same time as you hit the bass. Just feel the difference between starting the hammer with the bass note versus landing the hammer with the bass note. So starting the note first, and then as you hammer on, you play the bass note. So I'll call the sort of the more natural one where you start the hammer and the note at the same time. I'll call that type 1. And then the other one where you start the hammer and land it with the bass note, type 2. Right. First pattern, we'll repeat it over and over and play it at different speeds to get the hang of it. But the first pattern So you've got this bass note, which is the open 5th string, going all the way through the whole of this introduction, all the different patterns. And then you're landing So you're plucking fifth and fourth open together, and then hammering into, with the second finger, the fourth string at the second fret. So apart from the hammer, there's also the note coming up with your first finger, plucking up on the fourth string after the next bass note. So bass note and hammer together, bass note, and then pluck up on that fourth string. When you've got a feel for that, move on to the second pattern. So again, keeping all your fingers around the same chord shape. The second pattern starts with, you're now bringing the third string into play, and you're hammering with your first finger, third string into the first fret relative to the capo. So we've gone play this round slowly a few more times. So what we're doing here, we're pinching 5 and 3 together, open, landing the hammer, so this is a type 1 hammer on, landing the hammer with your first finger in that same shape, hitting the 5th string again, same as before, in the same place in the pattern, you're plucking up on the 4th string with your first finger, but then the whole of this phrase, the second phrase, so we've introduced a new idea, which is the type 2 hammer on. If you listen for it, so you're hammering into the 4th string, 2nd fret, but the bass note, it's going at a steady rhythm. That's you know, the basis for the whole phrase. That's steady rhythm all the way through with that bass note, but that hammer lands with the bass note rather than starting with it. So listen for that again. If that feels a bit funny or weird, it's worth getting used to it, because that type 2 hammer on comes up a lot as we get further into the introduction. So I will milk this a little bit, because I really appreciate it when people repeat the same thing over and over again in tutorials online. So let's link the first and second phrases together, and then I'll repeat the second phrase. I'll stay on that for a few bars. Okay, phrase 3. Okay, so we start the phrase, pinching 5 and 2 this time, bringing the second string into play, so same chord shape, and we're hammering into the shape with the third finger, which is second string, second fret. Pinch 5 and 2 open together, hammer that finger into the chord. So we're now on the up, we're plucking the third string with the second finger, pinch 5 and 2, hammer into the 2, hit the bass note, then hit the third string, first fret, keep your finger in position. Then you're hammering into that same string. And then, just as before, it's the same idea that you're going to land the hammer type 2 hammer on, you're landing your second finger into the fourth string, and it lands as the bass note hits. Let's just link all three phrases together. Okay. Now we transition into the fourth and final phrase, which has a slightly different rhythm to it. It's a bit more sprung. So we're now bringing the first string into play, pinching 5 and 1, bouncing that fifth string all the way, 5 and 1, hammering second string, hammering third string, hammering fourth string. So we're going through all the strings now. Listen to when the hammer lands in relation to the bass. So, you know, Nick's really ringing the changes now. We've got 3 type 2 hammer-ons in a row. The hammer always lands with the bass note. So we need to link all 4 of those phrases together, play each one through a couple of times, and then we go into the main pattern for the verses. There's just one detail to point out when we link from the third phrase into the fourth phrase. We cut the third phrase slightly short in order to make them join up. I'll show you what I mean by playing it through slowly. Once again. instead of it's one more time slowly. Okay, and then the final thing to say, to finish up on, I think, what will be a very long video on a short introduction, is the transition from the end of the introduction, final phrase, into the first chord of the verse and the main picking pattern. So it's sort of an E minor shape relative to the capo, and you're hammering into it. So remember, all the way through that introduction you've had that open 5th string setting the rhythm, and when you transition into the verse you're swapping from the 5th string to the 6th string, and then throughout the main pattern it's 6 and 5, 6 and 5, 6 and 5 throughout the main pattern. So introduction 5 5 5 5 5 all the way through. When you switch over, 6 5 6 5 6 5. But notice you're hitting the 6th strings starting the first bar of the verse, but you're landing a hammer on that 4th string, same note as before, but now this note is part of that E minor shape, and rather than just hammering into that one note and landing it in time with the 6th string, hammer into the full E minor shape like that. So you're picking the open 4th string, hammering into the E minor shape, and as the hammer lands you're plucking the 6th string. So you get a little bit of, you know, the notes from the 5th and the 4th strings as you land, a little bit of that note from the 5th string, even though you haven't touched the 5th string, you haven't plucked it. You get a little bit of it, and it sounds a bit fuller. You know, it sounds like the full chord that you're setting up for the verse. So okay, we're going to incorporate that right at the end of the final phrase, and I'll carry on the picking pattern for the main verse just so you see how the whole thing links together. Right, one more time. Okay, so now the pattern for the main verse. We've just hammered into this shape. Which is, I think of it as, you know, an E minor, because that's the shape we're familiar with relative to the capo. But because we've detuned that 3rd string by a half step, I think it actually becomes something like a B major relative to the capo, or actually, you know, in reality, it's an F major. But let's think of it as the E minor shape. 2nd chord is it's like the D shape but up a string, and or the way I think of it is it's A but with one note sharper, but it's the note that we've detuned. So in order to get the standard A, you just compensate by playing that third string 1 fret higher. So it's all the notes of the A chord relative to the fret. So chord 1, chord 2, and then chord 3 I think is sort of like a D major 7, and then back to the E minor shape. Right, so the pattern that takes us through most of the song is this one. That's a pared down version of it. So I think what we'll do is we'll establish this solid basis pattern and then add a couple of embellishments, which sort of, honestly, this pattern will get you 95% of the way there to sound like the Nick Drake version. And if you're singing along, it's a lot easier to play. And then just repeat that. So I'll show you that pattern, then I'll show you a fill that takes you slightly closer to what Nick's doing, and the slightly more elaborate version with the fill goes. And that's sort of, that's getting you 98% of the way there or something. And yeah, with the basic version and with that fill, I think you can get most of the way. I'll mention a couple of other details that you can add in to sound more like the record. But yeah, this pattern that we'll set up, it takes you most of the way there. So, as we just mentioned, the bass line all the way through, while you're on this E minor shape chord, it's just 6/5, 6/5. Then you change to this shape, the A, then it's just 5 and 4, 6 and 5, then that third chord, 6 and 5 again, 6 and 5. So that's worth bearing in mind as we go through. Normally with fingerstyle guitar, your thumb kind of covers 6th to 4th strings, and then your 3 fingers sort of sit around the first 3 strings. The easier position, I think, for the main pattern while you're in that first chord is to move all these fingers up, so you're covering 4th, 3rd, and 2nd strings, and then your thumb is just covering 6 and 5. So that main pattern again that takes us through most of the song, the basis of it is so that's 6, 5, 4, 6, 3, 5, 6, 5, 4, 6, 3, 5. When you've got the hang of that, you throw in some pinch notes that land with that bass note, the 6th. So first you're going to pinch 6 and 2 together. Then the next time it comes around, you pinch 6 and 1 together. So the sort of the melody you hear on top is that basic pattern again. 6, 5, 4, 6, 3, 5, 6, 5, 4, 6, 3, 5. throw in those pinch notes. So you're always pinching with the 6th bass note. Pinch 2, pinch 1, pinch 2. 2, 1, 2. And honestly, that's sort of 90% of the way there. If you can keep that pattern going and sing over the top, you know, you're going to sound pretty close. But if we want to get even closer to what Nick Drake's playing, we need to add in a couple of fills, some variations. A basic fill, 6, 5, 4, 6, 3, 5, 4. But instead of a pause, for breath there, we just add in an extra note. That's the basic fill, which does the job. Slightly more elaborate fill, which gets you like 95% of the way there, goes so those are the melody notes. 2, 3, 4, 3, 4. 2, 1, and this time when you come to pinch 2, you carry on and go 2, 3, 4, 3, 4. So all together. But you're keeping that rhythm 6 and 5 going all the way through, and the melody notes come in between the 6 and 5, so slowly that's and then we're pretty much there if we can get that fill working. The only other detail to notice, I think, is sometimes just as he's about to pass on to the second chord, I think Nick Drake sometimes throws in an open first string. So instead of going 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, it's 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, versus and in transition it sounds like this. Move down to that chord, you're not going 6 5 6 5 anymore. You're now going 5 4 5 4, and you're your fingers move from a resting position of strings 4, 3 and 2 to strings 3, 2 and 1, which is their more natural home. And in that chord you're playing it's the same pattern essentially as before, but you've moved all your fingers down a string, so you're going then you're throwing in a pinch again, but this time you're pinching fifth string as the bass, open first string, so the only tricky thing is getting used to moving your fingers down and then back up again. Let's do the change between the first chord and the second a few times slowly. Slightly more embellished pattern, the transition sounds like this. So you see you're changing between first and second for most of the verse. Just so to show where you're up to, I'll sing off key on top of that. So cello comes in. Strange face with your eyes, so pale and sincere. Underneath, you know well, you've nothing to fear. And the dreams that came to you when so young, cold of a life where stringers sung. So if you know the song and the verse already, you'll it's quite easy to work out for how many bars you stay on each of those chords. Then we get to this third chord, and the pattern is back to the E minor. So first of all, you've got your first finger, 6th string, 2nd fret. Then you've got second finger drops down to the 3rd string, 2nd fret. Then you're leaving the 5th and 4th strings open. Then with your 3rd finger, you're fretting the 3rd string, 3rd fret. You're going up from the 2nd to the 3rd fret and then back again, and then you're taking that finger off. So and then back to the first chord. And the picking pattern, while you're on the first shape of that third chord. So 6, 5, 4, 6, 3, 5 again. Then, so I think as the first pattern in the final chord. You do that once, and then there's a new pattern when you place your third finger on the third string, and the second pattern is you start with pinching 6th and 3rd strings, then 6, 3, 5, 4, 6, 3, 5, 4, 6, 3, 5, 4. So that 6, 3, 5, 4 repeats, I think it's 3 times. Then you take a finger off, 6, 3, 5, 4 again, take another finger off, 6, 3, 5, 4 again, and then you go back into that first chord. So from here, pinch 5, 4, then 6, 3, 5, 4, 6, 3, 5, 4, 6, 3, 5, 4, 3 times. Take third finger off, 6, 3, 5, 4 again. Take another finger off, so you're only holding down the 6th string in the 2nd fret. 6, 3, 5, 4 again, and then back into that chord. So just from the pinch again, pinch 5, 4, 6, 3, 5, 4, 6, 3, 5, 4, 6, 3, 5, 4, 6, 3, 5, 4, 6, 3, 5, 4, and then back into the main pattern. Told of a life where spring has sprung. And then I guess you can finish it how you like. Just finish with a strum, or you could mix it up like the record, where the pattern sort of breaks down. You could just do that to fade. I think I probably do something like that when I play it. Hope that's helpful.